Hello friends, in this video I'm going to go over the basics of return tracks in Ableton Live 10, what they are and why you should use them. There are two main uses for return tracks. The first use, which we'll cover in this video, is for using an effect on multiple tracks. So instead of placing the same reverb on 5 different tracks, you can put a single reverb on one return track and then have all 5 of those tracks use it. This will save you time, CPU resources, and it'll also help you keep the sound of your song consistent by not having several slightly different reverbs on different tracks. Another use of return tracks is for what's called mix bus processing. And for mixing purposes, you can reroute each track to one or more return tracks, and then you can process those tracks as if they were one. But you can even route return tracks to one or more other return tracks, but I'll cover those techniques in a future video. So to start, what is a return track? So you're probably already familiar with Ableton's MIDI tracks and audio tracks. And the third type of track in Ableton is a return track. When you start a new Ableton project, there are actually 2 return tracks already set up for you. If you look down here at the bottom of your track list, you'll see that there are 2 tracks labeled Reverb and Delay. Those are 2 return tracks, and you'll notice they start with a letter instead of a number. A return track is unique because it doesn't have any MIDI or audio content of its own. It can only receive sound from other tracks. So to use a return track, you tell your other tracks how much volume to send to the return tracks. So let's take a look at this track that I have here. So this track is pretty dry sounding, so I want to add some reverbs to the guitars and to the snare. And I can do this by going to the individual tracks and adding a reverb in the bottom device chain down here. And then I could copy that reverb and then paste it to the other guitar track and to the snare track. But that would mean that I'll have 3 of the same reverb running. And that's kind of a waste of my CPU. And also, if I wanted to change some of the reverb settings, I would need to make that change in 3 different places. And I could easily forget to do that. I could miss one of them. So instead, let's just use the existing reverb return track. So to access what's called the sends for a track, we send volume or content from one track to the return track. To find those, we just look below the volume for each track. So here's the volume, and right below it are these 2 boxes that say negative infinity. And each one of these boxes correspond to a return track. In our case, we have 2 sends, 1 and 2, because we have 2 return tracks. We have the reverb and the delay. Now, when you hover your mouse over one of these, if you look in the very bottom left-hand corner, down here in Ableton, you'll see that when my mouse is over one of the sends, it'll show me the label of the return track. So I can remember which return track is referenced from each of these 2 boxes. So the first one is my reverb send, and the second one is my delay send. So that's A for reverb and B for the delay. So to send this guitar track to our reverb, I'm just going to click and drag on the first send and drag it up. And now you can hear the reverb. Awesome. Now let's just continue and do that for the guitar 2 track and for the snare. And what's cool about return tracks is that we can choose how much volume of the guitar goes to the return track. So I can send a slightly less amount of volume from guitar 2 to the return track for the reverb. Now let's go ahead and add more for the snare. And what I can also do is actually use as many sends as I want on a track. So I can also add some delay to the snare if I want. So I can just take this second send and turn it up too to get delay. So now I have reverb and delay on the snare. Now, if you go down to the bottom here and you click on your reverb track, you'll notice at the bottom here that we have the same device chain that we're familiar with from our other tracks. So just like on your MIDI and your audio tracks, here's the reverb effect. And here you can just change the reverb settings. You could add more effects to this chain, or you could choose to swap out the reverb with a different one, like from a third-party plugin. So let's go ahead and swap this out. I'm going to remove this reverb, and I'm going to go and grab the Valhalla Room reverb instead. And now when I play this, it'll be using the Valhalla Room plugin instead of the Ableton stock reverb. Now, something that's amazing about return tracks is that we can now even further process just the reverb sound. So for example, I could grab an EQ and drag it down here after my reverb and EQ out some of the low, like rumbly parts of the reverb that I just really don't care about. Say I just want the reverb to be shimmery. And you can even get creative with it. I could do something like grab the Ableton Auto Pan, throw it at the end of the reverb, and have it automatically pan just the reverb sound from left to right, subtly. So you can see how you can get creative and a little crazy with these return tracks. But the great part is that we have just this one area to deal with our reverb. Some people will set up multiple reverbs, like one short reverb and one longer decayed reverb, and use those in different ways on different instruments. But what's great is just handling your reverb and your other effects in return tracks, so everything is just in one place. And whenever you make changes to those effects, it's automatically in use by all your other instruments that are using sends and sending their information to the return tracks. And remember, you can create more return tracks just by right-clicking over here and hitting Insert Return Track. Or you can go to the top menu, hit Create, and then click Insert Return Track, or use the corresponding keyboard shortcut. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions or you have any tutorial requests, please leave a comment below. Thanks.